It's now 6 o'clock right here on Big Breakfast. Today FM, today's hit music.
Hey, I'm Pauline.
And I'm Alan. Tune in to the Breakfast Show on Today FM with Pauline and I every weekday morning.
From 6 a.m. to 9 a.m.
Right here on Today FM, today's hit music.
Today FM, today's hit music.
Good evening, this is FBC News. I'm Jackie Spate. In this bulletin, heroin smuggler jailed for 15 years. Prime Minister Vorengem Bainimarama hopeful of charting a new course with Australia following change in leadership. And Tuvalu Prime Minister sends out a strong message to the French President ahead of the climate change talks in Paris in November. Australian property developer Ethan Kai has been sentenced to 15 years imprisonment for smuggling heroin into the country. Kai was found guilty of importing 29.9 kilograms of heroin from Laos via Thailand to Fiji. Madhyam Bolaitamana reports.
Following a trial that lasted about 6 weeks, Lautoka High Court Judge Justice Tusara Rajasinghe delivered a severe penalty to 34-year-old Ethan Kai. Justice Rajasinghe says he considered the weight of the heroin and the manner in which it was imported to Fiji, and it appears the drugs were mainly imported for commercial purposes rather than personal use. Justice Rajasinghe says Fiji has not been contaminated or polluted with the presence of illicit hard drugs like heroin and cocaine, etc. He says in the absence of sophisticated detection mechanisms, it is the duty of the judiciary in sentencing processes to contribute constructively and effectively to prevent offenders of this nature in repeating such crimes or deterring offenders and other persons from committing offences in the same nature in Fiji before it becomes a complicated social disarray. Justice Rajasinghe says the main purposes of sentencing Kai is founded on the principle of deterrence and protection of the community. Father of 2 children, Kai smuggled the drugs in tires of quad bikes. The drugs were discovered at the Lautoka Wharf by customs and police officers. Justice Rajasinghe sentenced Kai to 15 years imprisonment. Ethan Kai will not be eligible for parole for a period of 14 years. He has 30 days to appeal his sentence at the Fiji Court of Appeal. Madhyam Bolaitamana, FBC News.
Prime Minister Vorengem Bainimarama is hopeful Fiji can begin charting a new course with Australia. In his congratulatory note to the new Australian Prime Minister, Malcolm Turnbull, Bainimarama said Fiji looks forward to working with him to expand the bilateral ties between the two countries. Ritika Pratap reports.
In his letter to Turnbull, the Prime Minister focused on issue of climate change. He also congratulated Julie Bishop, who remains the Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister of Australia. Ritika Pratap, FBC News.
A political analyst at the University of the South Pacific, Professor Greg Fry, believes Fiji needs to open up channels of direct communication with the new Australian leadership as soon as possible. Malcolm Turnbull, who ousted Tony Abbott as leader of the Liberal Party and Prime Minister on Monday, is being seen as more receptive to the needs of the Pacific. Ritika Pratap again with this report.
Tony Abbott was very much about domestic policy, and everything he did outside Australia was really about domestic policy. Whereas I think that this guy will be very different. He'll be listening to the region. His whole thing is geared to Asia Pacific.
USP political analyst Professor Greg Fry says,
At the moment, it's obviously very unstable. Most people are interpreting it as a reflection of the new media cycle, the 24-hour cycle, sloganeering, a kind of a lack of substance. The reason that his colleagues voted for him in this case was because he would create a new economy. That's why Turnbull is popular, because he's a merchant banker, a smart businessman. He's very tuned to new industries. He's really wanting to look at service industries, new ways of moving away from the iron ore dependence on China. So that's the future. So the economy, if he's successful, the economy will come back.
He says Fiji should remain the first choice for holiday for the Australians. In terms of Australia's stance on climate change, Professor Fry says Turnbull is open to a much more effective policy. He says it is a good sign for the Pacific for an open dialogue on Australia's carbon emissions. Ritika Pratap, FBC News.
The Prime Minister of Tuvalu, Enele Sopoanga, has sent out a strong message to the President of France ahead of the COP21 meeting in November. Sopoanga says it is vital for France to know that water is already lapping on the doorsteps of many homes in small Pacific Island countries like Tuvalu. Ali Kimbia has more.
Failure is not an option for the world on climate change. And Ambassador, please kindly convey that message to your leaders in Paris. To pass the message that the water is already flapping at the doorstep of every Tuvaluan house and every Kiribati house and all the very low-lying islands.
Speaking at the signing of the delimitation of boundaries with France and Fiji, Sopoanga says,
I hope you will recognize how important and significant this exercise to us, the people of Tuvalu. And of course, with full recognition of the presidency of France over the upcoming Conference of the Parties number 21.
France Ambassador to Fiji, Michel Djokovic, says they are aware of the growing concerns about climate change, and the signing of the maritime boundaries with Fiji and Tuvalu signifies their support to all Pacific Island countries.
I would like to stress that France does not make any distinction between its citizens wherever they live. French citizenship is the same for all, regardless of ethnic origin or religious beliefs.
With France being the host country for the COP21 meeting, the Pacific will eagerly await the outcome. All attention will be on the leaders and whether they take a unified stand to reduce global greenhouse gas emissions in line with keeping the global temperature increase below 2 degrees Celsius. Ali Kimbia, FBC News.
Still to come on FBC News, 16 on sedition charges further remanded in Lautoka.
Ya vino pwede mwanto kwa chukuma ini mwasi kama kwa Bula FM namba ndiwe na siri na ngona ni ndende manda ke Central Rental sapo peke de rosu na kuita minichi me vana koloko. Ni sabula.
Oya wa wati sonda lai.
Gonga ya mwasi dono.
Nama kikirau mena tolu kene bitu. Ena via kabi moliti kene porombuka.
Goria na lali ne kabi. Bula FM namba ndiwe na siri.
Convincing world leaders to agree to legally binding agreements to cut down carbon emissions won't be easy. The Pacific Island Development Forum is preparing for a big fight at a global climate change conference in Paris, France in November. Edwin Nunn reports.
The world has woken up to the reality of climate change and the danger to small islands. But making drastic changes are another matter altogether.
Every country will negotiate with its own specific national situation in mind. So even, we talk about the large grouping of developed industrialized countries versus developing countries, but even within the developing countries, there's so many sectional interests. For example, in the developing countries, we have people who are countries which are oil producers.
Pacific Island Development Forum Climate Change Advisor Dr. Mahendra Kumar adds some countries are energy dependent, others have millions of dollars invested in coal mines, and still others have to battle social issues like poverty. All these combine to make climate change negotiations a complex, painstaking task.
Trying to get a deal which will be ideal for any one particular group or any one country would be almost impossible. It eventually will be a consensus.
Given this reality, the Pacific Island Development Forum would have liked to have seen a declaration from the Pacific Island Forum that had more teeth.
It would have been great to probably have the backings of our, the bigger countries, Australia and New Zealand, insofar as the leaders resolve on a number of matters is concerned. But having said that, I think it's also probably a good taste of what awaits us in Paris.
In the lead up to the Paris summit, PIDF executives will be in New York next week, meeting with representatives of small island developing states and the United Nations General Assembly in support for the all-important COP21. Edwin Nand, FBC News.
The bail application for 16 people of Nandronga who are charged with sedition and inciting communal antagonism will be heard on Friday. The state filed affidavits late yesterday afternoon. Bail was to be heard today, but defence lawyers have been given time to respond to 2 new motions from state lawyers. Justice Tushara Rajasinghe has directed the state to ensure that proper procedures are followed in court after a request was made to the registry to extend remand for 2 women. Justice Rajasinghe told the state lawyer that as a senior officer of the court, he should have known better than to ask the court registry for the extension. He will make a ruling on the application of unlawful detention of Andi Duvuatama and Andi Vasemadhangonewai on the 23rd of this month. A former Ministry of Health employee and a businessman have been charged with corruption-related offences by the Fiji Independent Commission Against Corruption. Semisi Havea, the former Ministry of Health Executive Officer Central and Eastern Division, is charged with 1 count of conspiracy to defraud and 3 counts of general dishonesty. Businessman Nielsen Nilesh Narayan is charged with 1 count of conspiracy to defraud. The offences allegedly took place between November 2012 and January 2013, relating to the servicing and repairs of government vehicles. They have been released on bail. The Media Industry Development Authority has confirmed receiving a complaint about comments allegedly made by radio announcers of Communications Fiji Limited's Radio Navtarang, making insensitive remarks about the alleged theft of the remains of murder victim Simran Singh of Rakiraki. MIDA Chairman Ashwin Raj says the authority will seek an official response from the media organisation and review the full transcript of the segment. However, CFL's Managing Director William Parkinson says they are yet to receive any correspondence on the matter from MIDA. Parkinson says they have a recording of the alleged comments and at no time did any of their personalities say anything. He, however, has expressed disgust at the incident and expressed their sympathies to the family. MIDA has advised members of the media to uphold the Media Code of Ethics at all times. The Water Authority of Fiji will be visiting 10 populated areas in the country, educating their customers on the importance of saving water and the value of water in our lives. The roadshow is part of the water saving campaign which began this week. WAF Acting General Manager Customer Services Sekove Uluinayao says they want the public to be prepared for the prolonged dry season.
For us, we haven't done this type of roadshow before, so this is a first for us in going to the communities to interact with them and engage with them, and also educate them on this important resource, which is water.
The Water Authority of Fiji team will be in Nausori tomorrow. And sports is up next. Here's Jamie with the latest.
Thanks, Jackie, and good evening. In sports after the break, John McKee says the announcement of the English team will not influence his squad.
घर संसार में आपका स्वागत है। आपका अपना छोटा सा स्वर, जहाँ प्यार भरे रिश्ते पलते हैं, जहाँ हेल्थी रहने की सलाह दी जाती है, जहाँ हम आपको और भी सुंदर बनाते हैं और जहाँ स्वाद की सौगात भी है। नमस्कार, मैं हूँ पल्लवी। सोमवार से शुक्रवार 9 से 12 तक रेडियो फिजी 2 देश की धड़कन पर घर संसार में शामिल रहिए मेरे साथ।
ऐसा सुंदर सपना अपना।
With the 2015 Rugby World Cup anticipated to be the biggest yet, World Rugby says its success will benefit second-tier rugby nations. This is in line with its efforts to bridge the gap between Tier 1 and 2 teams. Indra Singh with this report from London.
Reports and updates of the Rugby World Cup was proudly presented by Vodafone, Power to You, and Airports Fiji Limited, creating new experiences, Fiji's gateway to the world, in association with FMF, the right choice. Total, you know where to turn. And Sun Insurance, for Fijians, by Fijians. Supported by Fiji Airways, Dulux, Island Chill, Comfort Home Furnishing, and Central Rental.
The final works being put in at the Twickenham Stadium in London ahead of the Rugby World Cup opening on Friday, with this being forecasted as the biggest and best tournament ever.
It certainly will be a record breaker on many fronts, but for all of us, we've never really lost sight of the fact that we want to make it the best possible experience for the teams coming and for the fans arriving, of which there'll be close to 500,000.
World Rugby says this in turn will help affiliated nations and in particular teams such as the Vodafone Flying Fijians and other Tier 2 countries.
Yes, we're investing 16 million over the last 4 years in the Pacific Islands to ensure, as I said, that they're competitive, that the surroundings of their team structures are well done, that they've competed before they come here, that makes them very competitive and so on.
The parent body adds it will never neglect teams such as Fiji, and their investment is already paying dividends.
Yes, we do believe we're doing everything we can with the available money that we do have to invest in that region and in Tier 2 countries in particular.
The organisers are ready to host thousands into England, and in particular for the opening match between Fiji and England, which at the moment is the talk of the town.
Pretty much the job is done now. We're ready to go. We've got 6 fantastic weeks ahead of us.
In the meantime, with all the hype, teams and fans are jetting into the United Kingdom to be part of the 8th Rugby World Cup. Indra Singh, FBC Sports.
The Vodafone Flying Fijians had a closed training session today with the coaching staff taking the opportunity to perfect their game plan away from praying eyes. With Fiji yet to announce its match day squad, coach John McKee says he will not name his side based on what England have put out for their first game. Indra Singh has more.
England may have named a very powerful team, but the Fijians say this will not dictate on what and how they will run the show.
No, for us, it's about our team and about how we play. So whoever England select won't affect our selection for this game.
McKee has kept his players mostly away from the limelight, preferring to keep the attention at minimal.
You can definitely see the focus amongst the players towards this first game now.
The players also understand they need to focus because any lapse of concentration on Saturday, and this can prove costly.
If we rock up and play, and we've been working really hard over as you've seen over the last few months in Fiji, and look, the boys are really pumped to play. And
playing the first game of any major tournament comes with its own pressure, but this team is learning quickly to fend off unwanted attention.
Big stadium, and it's first game, and like for us, we play there in a big crowd. I think it's the boys, it's good motivated us for the big game.
So as the countdown continues for Fiji versus England at Twickenham, 82,000 people to turn up at this very venue to see the two nations do battle. The English to start as favourites, but the Fijians, as I mentioned earlier on, out to spoil the party and tear up the script. What will happen? We will find out on Saturday morning. Indra Singh, FBC Sports.
Meanwhile, World Rugby has responded to the statement released by Fiji Rugby Union yesterday calling for Fiji's inclusion in the World Rugby Council. The statement by FRU questioned why nations ranked lower than Fiji were in the council and not Fiji. In response, World Rugby said that there is some criteria that Fiji needs to meet before this can eventuate.
We're looking at finding the right criteria that incentivise, motivates unions on performance on a wide variety of criteria that will allow, hopefully, for an opening up of participation in terms of those teams coming onto the council. So we're not at the end of that process yet. That may provide in the future unions like Fiji and others with the possibility that if they comply in certain areas that are outlined, that they can hope to one day be on that council.
Fiji Rugby Union CEO Ronron Rotambo Levu confirms that they will look into and work towards these requirements to join the council. Former Fiji Mbati rep Jared Hayne bounced back from a horror start in his NFL debut yesterday. After dropping his first punt, he went on to help the San Francisco 49ers to a 20-3 win over the Minnesota Vikings. The 49ers head to Pittsburgh next Monday to take on the Steelers. Fiji's current #1 snooker player Jitendra Prasad is confident of defending his title. The fourth and final ranking tournament will be held this weekend, and Prasad is leading the charge going into competition. Being the top bet, he isn't taking other players lightly.
This is a very crucial tournament for us, like actually for me. I have to win this tournament so I can maintain my #1 in Fiji again. So maybe we got another two players there, Sahil and Pritesh Khatri. They're still number 2 and number 3. So everybody gonna fight for this tournament.
The ranking tournament will be held this weekend at the Lautoka Club. That's it from sports this evening. Jack is up next with business.
Two new kava products from Fiji will soon hit the Australian market. Takimai, the makers of the thirst-flavoured ready-to-drink kava in a bottle or kava shots, developed two new products which were shipped to Australia yesterday ready for distribution. Eleanor Tarangaivu has the story.
Ready for Australia, the new products expected to take kava drinking in the land down under to another level.
The products that we're launching in addition to the flavoured kava shots are your kava capsules. We also are very excited about this one, and that is our new instant kava powder. So you don't need to do the traditional lose with a sulu, but rather put in a few tablespoons into your tano and stir it and drink away.
The owner and founder Zane Yoshida says the company has had to meet very strict Australian regulatory requirements, a very different scenario they dealt with when it launched its first product in the US.
We sell the product in the United States as a supplement. In Australia, we have to abide by very strict guidelines because kava is classified in the Australian market as a listed medicine. So we have to go through a very strict regulatory process to ensure that we comply with the Australian Therapeutic Goods Administration.
Yoshida says kava is the answer to the Western world's search for stress-relieving drugs.
I think the Western world are really looking at a natural alternative to alleviating their stress. At the moment, their only options are through Prozac, Xanax, Valiums. I mean, those drugs are synthetic and they are very addictive. And I think as people become more aware of kava, they're looking at kava as an alternative to these medicines.
The products will first be launched at the Fiji Day celebrations in Brisbane on the 3rd of October and then in Sydney on Fiji Day celebrations on 10th October. They will also feature in several Australian Rugby Sevens tournaments. The company will also launch its online store while in Australia. There are plans to launch these products in New Zealand and Hong Kong next year. Eleanor Turangaivu, FBC News.
Mainly fine weather was experienced over Fiji today. A trough of low pressure lies slow moving over Solomon Islands and extends southeastwards over Tuvalu and Niue. Meanwhile, a broad southeasterly wind flow prevails over most southwest Pacific Island countries. All centres recorded temperatures in the high 20s today, with Savu Savu hitting the lowest at 25 degrees. Nandi recorded the highest temperature for the day at 30 degrees. And for tomorrow, cloudy periods with brief showers over the interior and eastern parts of the larger islands. Elsewhere, fine, cool at night. And for our further outlook, which is for Friday, brief showers over the eastern parts and interior of the larger islands, fine elsewhere. And the main points again: heroin smuggler Ethan Kai jailed for 15 years. Prime Minister Vorengem Bainimarama hopeful of charting a new course with Australia following change in leadership. And Tuvalu Prime Minister sends out a strong message to the French President ahead of the climate change talks in Paris in November. Our poll question for the week, we're asking, can we beat England in the Rugby World Cup opener? Visit our FBC website to take part. Remember, you can send us newsworthy pictures and videos on email citizenseyes@fbc.com.fj or share it with us via Facebook page FBC News. And if you're on Twitter, follow and tweet us your news tips at FBC_news or simply hashtag FBC News. You've been watching FBC News. I'm Jackie Spade. Bye for now.